Many things passed in this session, but many things did not. Among the most notable fails, a new gaming compact with the Navajo Nation, a ban on selling e-cigarettes to minors, and an ongoing effort to tap the state's land grant permanent fund for early childhood programs. Efforts to reform the Children, Youth, and Families Department mostly failed as well, despite the high-profile death, of course, of 9-year-old Omari Varela in Albuquerque. Now, Sherry, you've covered the session for the Gallup Independent this go-around. Navajo Nation President Ben Shelley said, look, the compact failed to show respect for folks out there, to his people. What does it mean, though, for the tribe not gaining this compact? What was on the line here for this compact?
Well, to them, they have plans that need to go forward. They need to borrow money. They need to get financing. So a lot of it is business. But what happened? The hearings to me said a lot. I think, and I've written this in a column. I think the Navajos got a raw deal. I think the other gaming tribes whose compacts are up for negotiation also got a raw deal. And what you heard again and again and again in the hearings was template. This word kept coming up, and for whatever reason, the administration chose to negotiate only with the Navajos. Now, maybe they were the most willing to negotiate. Maybe they were the first out of the chute. But by negotiating with one, it set up enormous mistrust with the others. And so they felt like they were going to be stuck with whatever the Navajos negotiated. And the reality is they're very different groups, very different tribes and pueblos, one from the other. Their facilities are very different. Some of them have destination resorts. Some of them just have little facilities like Acoma that pulls truck drivers off the road. And so they should have compacts that reflect all of their needs. And that's not what we saw. And what did happen was that the other tribes put up an enormous resistance and a very effective resistance. The way it all shook out was that it pitted one tribe against the other, which I really hate to see that. I hate to see that. It's very sad. And I think the only way this is going to work is for the administration to come back and say, okay, we're going to negotiate with everybody, so that everybody gets the compact that they need. Now, the Navajos still have a little bit of time, but they are really pushing the limit, and it was very important to them to get that done this session.
It's an interesting summary. It seemed fraught from the outside looking in with that setup you just mentioned, dealing with one tribe. Of course, the other tribes are going to react, it would seem to me, and that would cause an instant difficulty. So, kind of shades of Gary Johnson a few years ago when all this first started, thinking about it.
There have been negotiations with Pewaukee Pueblo too, but they apparently broke down because the Pewaukee filed a lawsuit last summer, I think, last fall.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly right. It's interesting, Rachel, when you think about other things that did not pass. E-cigarettes. Interesting. You thought that was one of those I thought automatically. Of course they're going to do this. What happened there? It's very interesting.
Yeah, that one. I think just that. That area has seen such explosive growth. Suddenly, all of a sudden, you just hear everyone talking about the popularity of e-cigarettes. So I think probably that's just such new ground in a lot of ways. It's probably one that's going to shake out for a while.
I was surprised too that didn't. I didn't hear any great outcry against the bill. It had bipartisan sponsorship. And usually, sometimes when there's something new, it kind of scares people into. I remember a few years, 30 years ago, when they passed legislation against clove cigarettes. That was going to destroy our youth. And they got very little done that session, but they did ban clove cigarettes.
That's funny.
So I was kind of surprised it didn't pass. I think it's one. I think it probably will in the near future.
Yeah, as someone who used e-cigarettes to quit cigarettes, I love e-cigarettes, but Dan, it's just one of those, minor's another thing altogether. So I realize it's a difficulty, but they have their place, it seems, in society now. But another thing that didn't work out, we started to touch on this a little bit, early childhood education. And I'm interested on a couple of different angles in this segment, and that is where leadership came out on this. Is it going to reappear? The guess is, I'm sure it will. But again, in an election year, Did this help or hurt somebody not being able to get this through and get it on the Constitution?
I think a lot of the Democrats, certainly not all of them, but would like to have that on the ballot this year to help, bring out voters. And I think it is something that people feel passionately about. But again, in the Senate, I think we saw that John Arthur Smith in the Senate Finance Committee, kind of leading the opposition to that, but others as well, kind of feeling that raising the distribution from that permanent fund to 7% would be too high. And so I guess there's debate about whether we need it now for these programs or to save it for the future. And so I think we will see that one will be back. And there's still and also the distribution rate for that fund is supposed to go down in the next 2 years, I believe, to even lower rate. So there's kind of a separate debate on whether to keep that current rate in place or let that go down. So
Speaking of debates on the same subject, interestingly, it seems like a million years ago, but early on we had Democratic State Party Chairman Sam Bregman weighed in on this very argument, and the reaction from the body, basically saying, paraphrasing him, that John Arthur Smith should be thinking about being a Republican if he can't quite get on board with this. It was interesting to watch the reaction of the body protect itself, though, wasn't it?
I agree. On one of the first days of the session, Michael Sanchez on the floor made a speech about that, and then other senators, other members, kind of also saying they didn't appreciate the attacks against Senator Smith and use that as defense for their votes in part.
That's right. And Sherry, it's interesting to think about that little dust up, because I can't imagine the party chairman was, it's a bedrock thing for Democrats. Early childhood education, bedrock. Either get on board with it or not get on board with it. How does that change the dynamics, having the state party chair in this argument in that manner? Was there some effect to your mind in Santa Fe when Sam Bregman went out there on this one?
Well, I think a lot of people probably said, well, that's Sam, because he's just a guy who's kind of out there. He's very outspoken. But he really did step in it, and I was glad to see them rally, for each other. And there were a lot of Democrats who thought that was totally inappropriate. But what I'm seeing is that it's more of an urban-rural issue. Outside of the Rio Grande corridor, those permanent funds are sacred. People in the rural areas do not want to tap those funds. And the last time they had to vote on it, the voting was very stark. They were opposed in the rural areas. They were in support of it in Albuquerque and Santa Fe and Las Cruces, if I recall. But it's. I think the kerfuffle was really just kind of Bregman, and that a lot of people were able to say, well,
Yeah, Steve, go ahead and touch on that.
Oh yeah, Sherry was right about the fact that it wasn't just legislators among Democrats coming to John Arthur's aid on that. A couple of days before the session, I saw former Governor Tony Anaya, at the Roundhouse. And I said, hey, Governor, what are you doing here? And he says, well, I'm just going to go down and see Senator Smith and tell him I support him.
Huh. Okay.
And I don't think it was appropriate for
the body does protect itself, doesn't it? It's very interesting. Yeah. Rachel Sams, CYFD had some needs, had some issues, had a lot of things that folks were looking at. Kind of a mixed bag coming out of it, as from CYFD's perspective, I would imagine. A lot of legislators wanted metrics, tracking numbers, all that kind of thing. But it takes money to do these things, right? In an election year, once again, where do we stand on CYFD, and what could folks expect at this point? Yeah.
That's a tough one with such an emotional case. So much in the headlines as the Omari case. I think it's tough to come out of a session and not be able to point to a lot of really decisive action at a time like that.
I would agree with that. Dan, your sense on that as well. Kind of bounced around in the middle portion of the session.
I agree. I think some of that you don't necessarily want to do a knee-jerk response either.
That's right.
And I think some of these CYFD issues are really deeply rooted. They're talking staffing levels, recruitment, retention. Not being able to keep these people, in the job and pay them enough money. So those are things that you can't just change overnight. And I think people would feel better if you could pass a law that would cure this and prevent this from ever happening again, but probably not that easy.
Interesting. We're at less than 30 seconds, Sherry. I'm curious your thoughts on marijuana. It was interesting I forget which legislator here said we need to watch Colorado before we make a decision here. All of them. All of them. Okay, that was the common theme. I'm glad you said that, because what was interesting about that was it was within a day or so of the governor of Colorado announcing they're going to make about $30 million more in taxes they originally projected. It's like, I would imagine people watching, that would get your attention, you know? So where's marijuana in New Mexico at this point because of that?
Well, and I should mention, I'm a native Coloradoan, so I've been watching this carefully. And
Yeah.
one of the things Colorado
About 10 seconds if you could. Sorry about that.
Okay, one of the things Colorado did first is that they had a good, solid program of medical marijuana, and I think we need that grounding here as well. But as far as the constitutional amendment, I think that actually was a ploy to have a reason to draw younger voters into the next election, and I have heard Democrats say that, not on the record.
Sure, absolutely. Now, in a minute, we're back to look at how pocketbook issues and economic development efforts fared at this legislative session.